Hello, if you're watching this video, this is going to be a weird one and very, very different to any of my other videos. I'm not making this video for anyone other than myself, so I just thought this might be quite cathartic, and I'm kind of in my feels today, and my therapist said, you seem to feel better when you talk about things, so I'm going to talk about things, and it's like a really heavy topic. What I'm going to talk about today is like the worst thing that's ever happened in my life. So I'm gonna try not to get too emotional about it. Will I cry? Probably. I don't want to promote this video. I don't want to clickbait it. I don't want to, do a crazy thumbnail for it or anything. I just want to be like completely honest and raw. And just basically talk through what happened with my dad and how I'm feeling about it, how I'm coping with it, sort of talk about my dad a little bit because I feel like it's a little bit fake of me to come on YouTube and create all these fun videos. And well, it's not fake, but I feel like it's a little bit like not letting you guys know about what's really going on behind the scenes, because in my videos, I come across as like bubbly and fun, and like I am a very like kind of happy looking person, I guess, but a lot of the time it's not like that because I'm dealing with grief and I'm going through this trauma and I haven't spoken about it. So it feels like I just don't feel comfortable with putting myself on the internet like that and not also providing the other half of the story, which is the fact that, myself and my family have been through like a real trauma this past year and we're still getting through it. I'm not even too sure how to do this video or what I'm going to do or what I'm going to say here. I think I'm just going to kind of word vomit some stuff out and just get it off my chest. So you'll probably be able to tell from the title of this video, my dad passed away last year on the 11th of July 2020, and it's May 2021 when I'm filming this video, so it's nearly a year has passed since he passed away. And to be honest, that's never a sentence that I ever thought I was going to say. My entire life, I'm 26 years old now, and my entire life my dad's been like very healthy. He had a very physically active job. He literally never had any health problems. Like, he was always the person that we didn't think we ever had to worry about. Like, I would get ill, my mom would get ill, other people in our family would get ill, but my dad was always the one person who was there. He was definitely like the kind of protector figure in the family. Like, we always felt safe with my dad. Like, we knew if anything happened, we always had him, like, and he was just there to protect us all the time. So it's very weird that he's no longer with us. We lost him very unexpectedly, and it wasn't anything to do with the pandemic or lockdown or anything like that. It happened during the lockdown, but it wasn't anything to do with that. I guess just to provide some context to the story, I ended up being admitted to hospital last year with something called pancreatitis, and I actually did a story time about it on my YouTube, if you wanted to watch that video. I'm actually shaking while I'm talking about this. I really struggle to talk about things like this for some reason. I just find it really difficult. So I was admitted to the hospital with pancreatitis, and the reason why I had pancreatitis was because of gallstones. They travelled in the direction that they shouldn't have travelled in my body, from my gallbladder, and they ended up blocking my bile duct, which then caused my pancreas to be inflamed. And it was horrible, and it was the worst pain I've ever experienced. Like, honestly, I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. It was the worst pain I've ever experienced. It was vile. And I was in hospital for a week, and they removed my gallbladder, removed the gallstones, and that in turn took away the pancreas inflammation and the pancreatitis. And now, pancreatitis is very touch and go. Like, you can, come back from it and get the treatment you need and recover like I did, or you I'm already getting emotional and I haven't even started talking about things, or it can lead to multiple organ failure, and you can die from it. So I was in hospital for about a week. I came back out, 2 week recovery time or so, and I was about 1 week into my recovery when my dad, on a Sunday afternoon, it was Father's Day actually, my mom and I had just been to my nan's house, I think, and we came back, and my dad started having these horrible stomach pains, and he ran upstairs, threw up, and I'd never seen him throw up in my life. So it was a bit concerning, but we thought maybe he had food poisoning or something. But he kept throwing up like 10 times, and he was dripping wet with sweat, and I'd never seen him look like that. So I was concerned because I didn't know what it was, and we called an ambulance for him. The ambulance came out, and my dad, they asked him to describe the pain that he was in, and he couldn't really find a word to describe the pain. He sort of just said, like, he didn't describe it well. He just said it was really, really painful. And I'd never seen my dad complain of any pain before or anything like that. So that was quite scary. But I thought, you know, maybe he had gallstones too. So I just come out of the hospital and I had been all sorted, and we were really thankful that I was okay, because it was really scary when I was there, and like, it could well have gone the other way. Do you know what I mean? The ambulance who came for my dad, they were like, we're gonna have to take him to the hospital, and we were like, okay, that's fine, like, that's the best place for him, like, get him what he needs and then he'll be home. And like, we were feeling okay about it. We were like, look, he's in pain, but they're gonna sort him out. They sorted me out, so do you know what I mean? He'll be in and out of the hospital within a week. And it was weird not having him here, because he's always here, like, he's never not here. So that was weird, but we were like kind of optimistic about it. We were like, he's in the best place, they're going to sort him out and he'll be back soon, he'll be fine. My dad had a bit of a questionable childhood, and that led to a fear of hospitals for him. Even, you know, at his age of 55, we knew he wouldn't like that, so we were a bit anxious about him. We just didn't like him being in there on his own. But obviously, because of the pandemic, we couldn't visit him. And you're only allowed to visit people during the pandemic if it's like severe. If they're in a really bad way, that's when you can visit them, kind of thing. So we weren't allowed to visit him, which we were thinking is a good sign actually, because they only let you visit them when it's severe, and we weren't allowed to visit him for a while. So we were like, okay, that's good, it's not that bad. My mum and I were trying to text my dad, because when I was in the hospital I was on my phone all the time and I was responsive and everything, but my dad like wasn't responding to our text messages, and we were getting really, really worried. So we were calling the hospital to check on him, because he wasn't responding to our text messages. And again, that was very unusual. He always responds to our text messages. We found out that he had the same thing that I had. He had pancreatitis, caused by gallstones. So the exact same problem happened to him in the space of about 3 weeks, which is insane. And it's not known whether this is a hereditary thing that can be caused. Like, there's not a lot of research that's being done into pancreatitis or pancreas related illnesses. And I actually set up a fundraiser for research into pancreas related problems and pancreatitis, which I'm going to link down below. And we've raised over £1,000, and way more needs to be raised for research into this, because it can affect anyone. But anyways, we found out from the hospital staff that things were getting quite bad with him, so they were giving him all the treatment they gave me. They gave him even more treatment, and his body wasn't responding in the way that they wanted. Problems in his pancreas, the infections, it was spreading to his other organs. And he was still in so much pain, and the pain wasn't easing up. For me, the pain really eased up when I was in hospital, and it wasn't easing up for him. I believe he was in there for about 3 days, and then he was moved to the intensive care unit, which never happened to me when I was in there. So immediately that was quite concerning. But you know, we were remaining hopeful, because we were like, it's my dad, like, obviously he's going to get through this, like, he's the strongest man I know, like, this isn't a problem, like, he's going to be fine. Days kept passing and there wasn't any better news. Like, we just kept getting like worse news from the doctors. Like, we called every single day, twice a day, and we was texting my dad all the time as well, like sending him pics and stuff, saying like, we love you, we miss you, like, we hope you're getting better soon. But yeah, we just kept getting worse news every day from the doctors and the nurses, and it was like, okay, the infection spread, and you know, his liver function's decreased, his oxygen levels have decreased, we've had to put him on a ventilator, we've had to put him on dialysis, which is a machine that cleans your kidneys, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse, and we were so confused. We were like, I don't understand, like, they've given him all the treatment and they're trying their hardest, but it's just not, like, it's like sorry guys. So he wasn't getting any better, and you know, there were some days where it plateaued, so it wouldn't get worse but it wouldn't get better. And we were like, okay, maybe sometimes it needs to get worse before it gets better. You guys know where this story's going. Like, it just didn't get better, it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I believe he was in the hospital fighting this disease for 3 weeks. He was admitted on Father's Day, and he passed away on the 11th of July in the hospital. And it was obviously really sudden because it was just that 3 week period, and before that he was fine, he was healthy, like my mom and dad had their future together to look forward to, like they wanted to do so much travelling together, and then all of a sudden he was gone. And I suddenly had to kind of stop being a kid a little bit. Like, I know I'm 26 and I'm an adult now, but I kind of had to grow up and like be the adult in the house with my mom now that my dad wasn't here to like, I don't know, yeah, basically that changed everything. And we knew a couple of days before he passed, like we knew that he was kind of at a point now where he couldn't make a turnaround from it, and I believe they actually performed surgery on him a few days before he passed and help him, and that was really dangerous in itself, and thankfully he survived that, but then he didn't survive the actual disease in the end anyway. The hospital were great, like I really truly believe that they did everything that they could to try and help him. With like the Royal Hospital in London, they tried everything. It feels like a lifetime ago almost, but like it feels like it was yesterday at the same time. We knew a few days before that was the end of the line. We're still in shock, I'm not gonna lie. All this time has passed and I still feel like I'm in shock about it, and I just remember being like, we went into the hospital to visit him a couple times before he passed because they said that he'd gotten to the point now where it was really bad and we were allowed to visit him, and we knew that that was a bad sign. They actually put him in like a medically induced coma, so they put him on so many drugs that he was in sort of like a comatose state, because with all the drugs that he was on and the pain that he was in, he was sort of getting a little bit delirious. And at one point when he was awake, he tried to take out like all of the needles that were in his arm, like feeding him painkillers, tried to take these out himself. He wasn't thinking straight, so they decided to put him in a sort of like drug-induced coma to, well, firstly make him more easy to sort of manage so he wasn't harmful for himself in that sort of state, but also because he was in so much pain with the pancreatitis. Like, guys, seriously, I have had that pain less than my dad did, but I had that pain and it really was like, I can't explain it to you. It was the worst pain ever, and it honestly breaks my heart to think of like how long he went through that pain. Do you know what I mean? Like, that breaks my heart. So like, I totally support them putting him into this drug-induced coma, because if he's not in pain, like, do you know what I mean? I would much rather that be the case. So we went and visited him in the hospital, and obviously because he was in this state, he couldn't like speak to us. He like, I don't know if he knew that we were there. But when you're in these kind of states, I looked into this online obviously, and it sort of says that sometimes they can hear you and they do sort of know that you're there, but they can't like actually respond to you. So I like to think that he could hear us when we went, and he could sort of like sense that we were there with him, and like, because of like the pandemic and everything, usually you're not really allowed to like touch the person who's the patient or whatever. You've got to wear your face mask and your gloves and whatever, but like on the 11th of July, the hospital called us at 5 a.m. and they were like, all of his organ functions are rapidly decreasing. So if you want to come see him, you need to come now. So we got the phone call at 5 a.m. and we drove to the hospital. So we drove to the hospital at 5 a.m. And we were there with him like for about 2 hours. And he was attached to all these different monitors which were showing like his function in everything, like his heart rate, his beats per minute, like the oxygen levels. He was also on a ventilator, and so we saw them slowly dropping, and we were like, they like let us take our masks off and like let us hold his hand and stuff, because they knew he was obviously like on his way out, so it didn't really matter at that point. So we went and we just sat with him for 2 hours and we spoke to him, and we just tried to say, like, I guess goodbye. And this was such a wild time because I never thought I'd have to prepare to say goodbye to my dad, and like my mom definitely didn't either. Oh, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm trying not to be too emotional because I actually just think it's fine. So we held his hand and we talked to him, and I got to tell him like just like things that I would want him to know. Do you know what I mean? Like how much I love him, how like grateful I feel that he's my father, and like even though he can't be here now, like I'm still grateful that he's my dad. Like that's not something that anyone can take away from me. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel lucky to have been raised by him in the way that I was raised. Like it sounds weird, but I feel like the way he raised me is gonna allow me to cope with this loss. Like he was and like is the strongest person I've ever met. Like if I told you all the details of like the stuff that that man has been through, I'm not going to do that because it would be on the internet. But if I told you the details of it, you'd just be astonished. Honestly, he is the strongest person I know, and that's why this whole thing is so confusing as to why I managed to recover from this disorder, but for some reason in him it was so much more aggressive and so much more violent. It attacked his system so much more than it did mine, and I almost like I feel guilty sometimes because I'm like, well, why am I allowed to get better from this and recover from it, and yet it's the thing that killed him. I feel like the love and the strength that he, raised me with and provided me with is allowing me to get through this grieving process, because my dad, like, as I got older, we didn't always see eye to eye, but when I was a kid we were like best friends, and he sort of raised me to be like, I don't know, like I think he wanted a boy or something, because he always dressed me in like boys' clothes, and like we spent so much time together. In my childhood pictures, it's always like my mom taking the picture and like me and my dad like together. And like as I got older and I got more opinionated and I went to uni and like we kind of changed like personalities or views or whatever, we definitely had more arguments. But I think that's normal. Like that's definitely how a father-daughter relationship works sometimes. Like definitely said things to each other that I 100% regret, and I know he regrets, but that was our dynamic in our relationship. And if he was here now, I would call him an idiot, but I would give him a hug. Do you know what I mean? And like I don't want to feel bad about that, because I know that whatever we said to each other or whatever we called each other or whatever stupid nicknames we had, at the end of the day, it was still just love. Like we just had love for each other. Like, and I'm not kidding or being dramatic when I say this, but my dad literally gave me everything I could have possibly wanted. Like his entire life was me, my mom, and our dog Molly. Like I swear to God, that was his entire life. He would go to work, and then any other time he just wanted to be in our home with us, doing anything as long as it was just with the family. He's literally the weirdest dude ever. Like I've never met a man or a human being like my dad before. He's so weird, and he's got the weirdest sense of humour, and he's the wittiest person. Honestly, he's so funny and so witty, and I was raised with humour. Like I was raised with being in a funny family environment, and I can see that in myself now. Now that my dad is gone, I like have started to realise just how similar we are. Like, and a lot of people say that to me. But yeah, back to the hospital. So they say that when you pass away, the last thing to go of your senses is your hearing. So what we did is we spoke so much. My mom and I held his hand. We spoke so much, told him all the things that we wanted him to know, that we loved him, that we missed him, that we were so proud of him for everything that he's done, and we're so grateful for him as well for everything he's given to us. He literally made sure that me and my mom never went without anything. Like if we wanted it, he literally hustled and worked his ass off and he got it for us. Like we are so lucky and so fortunate, and like he taught me so much. Do you know what I mean? He's like one of the smartest people I've ever met. He just knows everything. He's one of those people who you'll speak to him about something and he already knows everything about it, and I'm like passing away at age 55 is not, it's not on. Do you know what I mean? Like that's way too long. That's way too young. Like it's not okay. There's so much stuff that I wanted to do with him. Like I wanted to travel to so many different countries with him. Like I just wanted to create way more memories with him. And to be honest, I actually feel like I've been robbed. Do you know what I mean? I feel like my mom has been robbed as well. Like I feel like it's so unfairly being taken away from us. This life, this human being that we love, and we're just love to have back. Really just hope that, you know, he heard all this stuff when we were in the hospital saying goodbye to him. I hope that he heard it. What was weird is that it's like I couldn't properly say goodbye because obviously he was in a coma, so he couldn't say goodbye back. He couldn't communicate with us in any way, and I think that was really hard. But at the same time, like, I'm so glad that I was with him when he passed, because I think if I decided not to go to the hospital and I didn't go to see him, I would have just regretted it forever. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that was a nice experience in any way, shape or form. Like, I literally have nights now where I'm trying to fall asleep and that's what I remember. I'll just be lying in bed and I'll be transported back to the hospital remembering those moments, and it is honestly like trauma. That's the only way I can describe how it feels to me. Like, my heart or my brain or both hasn't like quite processed what's happened yet, because it still kind of feels like I'll be coming back home and I'll see that like his car isn't there, and I'm like really confused for a second, and I'm like, why isn't Dad's car there? And it's almost like I've forgotten for a second, but I haven't forgotten. It's just that it kind of hits me again. And like, I never really understood what people meant when they would say things like, oh, I miss someone every second of the day and I think about them all the time. I was like, how can you be thinking about that all the time? But like, it's so true. Like, in the sense that I can be happy, or I can be having a good time and I can be laughing, but then in the back of my head I'm like, am I really happy in this situation? Because how can I be happy? Because I miss my dad so much. Do you know what I mean? And like, I don't mean for that to sound too morbid, because whilst the pain is like kind of always there, it does feel less like potent as time passes. Like, it's just because you adjust and you realise that you will get through the day and you will get through these things. Had his funeral a couple of weeks after he passed, and I wrote the eulogy for it. Like, I wrote the whole thing. Like, the guy who presented it didn't actually change a sentence. Like, he straight up read it as I wrote it, kind of thing. And usually the person who presents it changes something, but he was like, the way you've written this is actually perfect. I don't need to change anything at all. And like, hearing this dude, I kind of regret not saying the speech myself, because I feel like him saying these things and talking about these memories, it would have just sounded different when I said it, because I have the actual emotion behind those words, and I feel like it would have just been conveyed better. Having said that, his funeral was beautiful. Like, it was a stunning service. Like, the music we chose to send him off to, and the speech, and the pictures, we did like a little slideshow of pictures of him, and like, it was really beautiful. And you know, we had people there who, like, basically the place that he worked at completely shut down for the day, just so the people there could attend, because he had worked there for so long. Everyone was super supportive, and like, this is something else. Since Dad has passed, everyone has been so supportive, and like, the amount of love, gifts, money, text messages, everything that we've received has been incredible. You really find out when someone passes who is there for you and who is like really genuinely there to support you, and I was like really touched by that. Like, obviously I'd rather we didn't have to go through that, but like, given the circumstances, like, it's been so nice how people have reacted and really tried to show us love. He's just so dry with his sense of humour, but so silly at the same time, and that combination is just a unique one. As I mentioned, the most intelligent person, absolutely insane. He was loyal. He loved his job, like, genuinely loved his job. Like, that's all he wanted to do as a kid, and he did it. And he was so happy with it. My mum and dad are like two of my biggest inspirations in my life, because they're both so strong in different ways, and they're both such different people, but they complement each other so well. Yet they're so they couldn't be further apart in their personalities, yet it works. He's just so weird and funny and like unpredictable with the things that he would say, and yet like still so stable and constantly there for us. And I often like speak out loud, like when I'm by myself, like doing this but without a camera, and just talking to my dad and being like, I hope you know that I miss you and I love you and everything, and just all that kind of stuff. And I just hope that he does know. And like, I know that he does, but I also, it's kind of like, I can't say it to him now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't just pop downstairs and give my dad a hug. And like, to be honest, that's one of the hardest things, because like, I'd really love to just be able to give him a hug right now. Like, like I think that's what gets to me, and I do have frequent breakdowns about this, like really frequent breakdowns, and it's not something that anyone should have to deal with. Like, nobody should have to go through losing a loved one. But there are people who go through much worse things as well, but at the same time, like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I hope that this is the worst thing that ever happens to me and nothing worse happens, because this has been so hard mentally, emotionally, even physically. Like, the amount of things that have had to have changed and the amount of shit that my mum and I have had to deal with just in order to like keep going. My mum and I have dealt with this loss in very different ways. My mum, you know, at the beginning she liked to speak about it a lot. She liked to get it off her chest, and I would get really angry because I didn't want to speak about it because it hurt too much. I didn't want to think about it because, again, it hurt too much. So I just decided to not, and I just turned it off, and I like cried for a few days, and then I was just like, right, no, like, things have to continue. Like, I'm just being really strong and I'm just not going to talk about it, and I don't need to think about it. And now it's coming out in different ways, like in microaggressions, and like it's really been, to be honest, effing with my mental health. Like, I'm now seeing a therapist about it because I haven't handled this in a way that I think is the healthiest way to handle this. So I'm trying to rectify that now, and I'm trying to get it out of my system. I'm trying to talk about it, and I do talk about him a lot, and I very much so want to keep him alive, like with my conversations and talking about him and like thinking about our memories and like just talking about him and like acting as if he's still here. Like, I want to keep him here by doing that, and I speak out loud all the time as if he can hear me. And I don't believe in an afterlife. I don't believe in any of that kind of stuff. But I feel like when someone dies and you're hurting so much that you'll just do anything to make yourself feel better about it. So even though I don't believe in an afterlife, like, I'm kind of like pretending as if there is one, so I can like talk to him, or like, I don't even know. And it sounds crazy, like, but if you're hurting and you're doing something that is making you feel better, like, why not? Do you know what I mean? I'm like the least spiritual person ever. Like, I don't believe in any of that stuff, but like, this is what desperation does to you. Like, you just try things, and if it makes you feel better, like, who is it hurting? It's not hurting anyone. So if you want to think that, think that. Do you know what I mean? If it's making you feel better, why not? When he passed away, I started seeing, like, this is gonna sound weird, but like loads of butterflies, and for some reason I started attaching importance or significance to these butterflies, and sometimes I still do. Or like, if I see certain birds in our garden, or if like there are grey or white feathers that keep appearing in our house, which they do, and it's really weird, but it's probably just a coincidence, but I'm like attaching meaning to them because I'm like, maybe this is my dad's way of communicating with me, or like saying hi or whatever. And I'm like, I know that that's crazy. Like, I actually do know that that's crazy, but if it's giving me a little bit of joy and a little bit of hope, like, and it's not hurting anyone, then maybe I should just believe it. Like, I don't know. It's a song that we played at his funeral, and it just keeps appearing on the radio whenever my mum's in the car, and it's, I know people like feel close to their lost loved ones in different ways, but I'm definitely using like music as a way of feeling close to him. Like, even songs that I like, that I feel like he would like, I'll listen to them and I'll just cry, or I'll just like really feel the song and it'll make me cry, and I'll just feel close to my dad somehow. Like, that's how I feel connected with him, and I don't know how or why, but like, music just seems to be that kind of segue for me into like feeling that closeness or attachment with my dad. And it's so weird. Like, the stuff you go through during grief is like the weirdest stuff ever, because one day you can be absolutely fine and you can feel like, look, I'm feeling strong, I'm going to get through this, I'm going to be the bad bitch that my dad would want me to be, keep things strong for my mom, keep things strong for my family. And then the next day you feel as though you can't continue anymore, and you can't deal with this, and it's too much, and it's too overwhelming, and then you can be on top of the world again, and it's just so, it's all over the place. Like, I just want to say as well, my mom is, the way my mom's handling this as well is incredible. Like, she's so strong, and I knew she was strong anyway, but this is like, I don't even want to get into that, because I don't even know how to speak about it, because she's the strongest person ever, and my dad would be so proud. Like, I feel like he'd be proud of both of us, to be honest, because like, the way I handle things and the way my dad handles things are very similar. Like, we're basically the same person in that respect. Even my dog has had anxiety, so my dad and my dog were like best friends. Like, it was pretty adorable, to be honest. And we had to take Molly to the vets recently because she was showing like anxiety symptoms and stuff, and now she's on like calming tablets because she's having separation anxiety from her owner, my dad. In the words of Harry Potter, the ones that love us never truly leave us, and I truly do agree with that. Because how can someone leave you if they're in your heart? Like, that sounds cheesy AF, but like, it's true. If you think about someone and think about the ways that they've influenced you and the ways that they have left their sort of footprint in your life, then how can they leave you? Always have that part of them with you. And like, for example, with our house, I see bits of my dad everywhere. Do you know what I mean? I see him in his clothes that we still have. I can still see him like wearing those clothes. Like, I can actually still see him and what, you know what I mean? Like, I can imagine him stood in my hallway right now, and I can physically see like where his height would end and what he would look like. And it's crazy how much he's imprinted into my memories and my brain. Like, you have to be as kind to yourself as possible during this. You're not in a rush to heal. You don't have to grieve for 5 days and then get on your shit again. That's not how it works. Like, you just have to do whatever you have to do. If you're feeling like doing something that day, like if you just want to stay in bed all day and cry, then do that, because that's what you need. Like, it's, you don't just recover from this kind of stuff. Like, someone that you love has been snatched out of your life, taken away from you, and now you have to readjust to life and living in that world in a completely different way. So you're not gonna just immediately be able to cope with that. Some days I have days where I feel euphoric and I'm like, my dad isn't here now, so I feel like I have to live my life to the fullest to make sure that the life that he gave me is used well. Do you know what I mean? I feel like in my life now I just want to do so much to make him proud. I just want to make him feel proud and be like, yes, like that's my daughter. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want him to be proud and I want to live my life to the most extreme full potential, and just make sure that I get so much done in my life and I live so much and I experience so much that like he can sort of live vicariously through me whilst I'm doing this. Like, that doesn't even make sense, but it makes sense in my head, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't need to make sense to other people. Like, my dad still feels very much so like here to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can feel his presence in our house almost, which sounds weird as hell. There's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's to just not take anything for granted. I would like to think that if my dad was still here, he would think it's kind of cool that I'm doing YouTube, because he defo watched some YouTubers, so I think he would definitely think it's kind of cool. He'd definitely take the piss out of me, but he would also think it's secretly kind of cool. Basically, grief is wild, and it's been a really, really sucky year. I guess that's the end of the video. I feel like I've gotten quite a lot off my chest. Anyone who hasn't lost a family member or isn't grieving or isn't experiencing loss or anything, if you're watching this video, just go give your family members a hug and a cuddle and tell them how much you appreciate them. All that matters in life is your own health and the health of your loved ones. So I hope that's something positive that you can take.